Envelope was sitting on my kitchen counter when I got home from church. I almost didn't notice it. I'd been moving slowly that morning. My knees were bothering me, the way they always do when the weather changes, and I was focused on getting my coat off and putting on a pot of coffee. But then I saw it. A cream-colored envelope with my name written on the front in handwriting I recognized immediately. My daughter's handwriting. The looping, careful letters she'd learned in 3rd grade and never quite let go of. I stood there for a moment with my coat still half on my shoulders. She lived 40 minutes away. She could have called. She could have texted the way she always did. Short messages, a few words, never enough. Instead, she'd driven here, to the house she grew up in, and slipped an envelope under my door while I was at church. While she knew I wouldn't be home, I set my purse down slowly. I finished taking off my coat. I hung it on a hook by the door the way I had every Sunday for 31 years. Then I walked to the counter and picked up the envelope. I told myself it was probably a birthday card. My birthday was 3 weeks away. Maybe she'd finally remembered, without me having to mention it first. Maybe this was her trying. I opened it carefully, the way you open something you're afraid of. It wasn't a birthday card. It was an invitation to my son-in-law Marcus's company launch party. A real printed invitation, heavy cardstock, gold lettering. The kind you send to clients and investors. The kind that signals, this is important. This is who we are now. And at the bottom, in that same looping handwriting, 4 words she'd added by hand. Please don't come, Mom. I've been trying to figure out how to explain my daughter to you, and I'm not sure I can do it simply. She wasn't a cruel child. I want you to know that first. She was bright and determined and sometimes tender in ways that caught me off guard. She used to leave little notes in my coat pocket when she was small, just to say she was thinking of me. I kept every one of them. I still have them in a box in my closet, but somewhere along the way, something shifted in her. I watched it happen and I couldn't stop it, and I spent years trying to understand it. Her name is Claire. She's 34 years old. She married Marcus when she was 29, and Marcus comes from a different world than the one Claire grew up in. His family has money. Old, quiet money. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. His mother hosts charity dinners. His father sits on boards. They have a house in Connecticut and a place on the vineyard, and they've been very kind to Claire in the way that people are kind when they've decided to accept you as a project. Claire changed when she married into that world, not all at once. Gradually, the way a river changes course, you don't see it happening until you look back and realize the water isn't where it used to be. She started correcting the way I spoke. Small things, at first. She'd wince when I said fixing to or I reckon, phrases I'd grown up with, phrases her grandmother used. She stopped bringing Marcus to family gatherings on my side. She told me once, carefully, that she was working on her personal brand and that certain associations made things complicated. I didn't understand what that meant. I still don't, entirely. But I understood the feeling behind it. She was ashamed of me. Not of anything I'd done wrong, just of what I was. A 63-year-old woman who worked 30 years as a school librarian in a small town in Virginia, who drove a 10-year-old Honda, who said fixing to and brought potato salad to potlucks and didn't know which fork to use at the kind of dinners Marcus's family hosted. I tried to adjust. I bought new clothes. I watched what I said around her friends. I smiled and stayed quiet at Marcus's family events and never mentioned that I'd been the one to teach Claire how to read, how to ride a bike, how to get back up when things fell apart. And things did fall apart more than once. In the years before Marcus in the Connecticut house and the personal brand, none of it was enough. The distance just kept growing. And now there was this envelope. This invitation she'd driven 40 minutes to deliver by hand on a Sunday morning while I was at church so she wouldn't have to look me in the eye when she told me not to come. I put the invitation down on the counter. I poured my coffee. I sat at the kitchen table where I'd helped Claire with her homework for 12 years, and I looked out the window at the yard where she'd learned to do cartwheels and I let myself feel it. Then I picked up the phone, not to call Claire, to call my friend Roberta. Roberta has known me since we were in our 30s. She raised 3 kids, mostly alone after her husband left, and she has the kind of laugh that makes a room feel warmer. She answered on the second ring. "I need to tell you something," I said. "Coffee or wine situation?" she asked. "Coffee. For now." I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I love most about her. When I finished, there was a pause. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'm not going to cry about it." I lied a little. There, I did cry. Later, after we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and I cried for about 20 minutes. Not loud, not dramatic, just the quiet kind of crying that comes when something you were still hoping for finally shows you it isn't coming. Then I washed my face, heated up my coffee, and started thinking clearly. The party was in 6 weeks. It was being held at a venue in Richmond, a renovated event space that Marcus's company had rented for the occasion. According to the invitation, it was a Friday evening, 7 o'clock, cocktail attire, the launch of Marcus's new consulting firm, something he'd been building toward for 2 years. I had been proud of him for it. I want to say that plainly. Whatever was happening between me and Claire, Marcus had worked hard for this, and I had genuinely wanted to be there to see it. I'd asked Claire about it twice over the past few months, asked if there was anything I could do to help, if she needed anything. Both times she'd given me vague answers and changed the subject. Now I understood why. I spent the next week going back and forth with myself. Part of me said, "Let it go. Don't make a scene. Don't make her life harder. You raised her to be independent, and she is, even if the way she's using that independence is breaking your heart." The other part of me, the part that had gotten up every morning for 30 years to go to a job that mattered, that had paid every bill on my own, that had held this family together through things Claire had already started to forget. That part said something else entirely. It said, "You have done nothing wrong." And it was right. I had done nothing wrong. I wasn't estranged from my daughter because of anything I'd done. I was being erased because of what I represented. A past she decided no longer fit the life she was building. And there's a difference between a parent who is kept away because they caused harm and a parent who is kept away because their child is ashamed. A very important difference. I had almost made peace with staying home when I ran into Patricia. I'd met her once before, briefly, at a Christmas party at Marcus's parents' house 2 years ago. She was Marcus's aunt, his father's sister, and she had introduced herself to me warmly and asked about my work and genuinely seemed interested in what I had to say, which was unusual enough at that party that I remembered her. I ran into her at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks before the party. She was looking at tomatoes, and I almost walked past her without recognizing her. And then she looked up and said, "You're Claire's mother. Margaret, right?" "Yes," I said. "And you're Patricia." She smiled. It faded a little, quickly. "I'm glad I ran into you, actually. Are you coming to the launch?" I paused. I wasn't sure what Claire had told people. I wasn't sure what the official story was. "I'm not sure," I said carefully. Patricia looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" We sat outside at a little cafe on the edge of the market, and Patricia told me things I hadn't known. That she had been close with Marcus growing up. That she had noticed over the past few years how he and Claire had slowly been pulling away from certain people, her included. She'd been told, gently, that the launch was business-focused and that the guest list was being kept tight. A courtesy invitation had arrived for her, just like mine. "She added a note to mine too," Patricia said. "She didn't tell me what it said. She didn't have to." We sat with that for a moment. "I raised that boy's father," she said finally. "I was at the hospital when Marcus was born. I taught him how to fish." She shook her head. "And now I'm being managed like a liability." "That's exactly the word," I said. "Liability." She looked at me. "Are you going?" "I've been thinking about it," I said. I've been thinking about it too, she said. We looked at each other. I don't know exactly who decided first. Maybe we both decided at the same moment, the way you sometimes do with a person you've just met, but already understand. I think we should go together, she said. The next 3 weeks were quieter than I expected. I didn't call Claire. She didn't call me. I went to work, came home, tended my garden, had dinner with Roberta twice. I thought carefully about what I wanted the evening to mean. Not revenge. That wasn't it, and I want to be clear about that. I have never been interested in revenge. What I wanted was simpler and harder at the same time. I wanted to exist, not to cause a scene, not to embarrass Claire or disrupt Marcus's moment. I meant it when I said I was proud of him for building this, and that hadn't changed. But I was his wife's mother. I had sent them a generous gift when they got married. I had shown up every time they asked. I had stayed out of their lives when they wanted space and been available when they needed something. I was not a problem they had invented. I was a real person with history and love and 34 years of watching my daughter become who she was. I was going to walk into that room as myself. Just that, nothing more. Patricia and I met for dinner beforehand at a restaurant near the venue. She looked lovely. A deep green dress, silver earrings. I'd worn navy blue, which I always feel myself in. We had a glass of wine and talked about our lives. Her work as a retired teacher, my years at the library, the particular texture of raising children who grow up to surprise you. She made me laugh twice, genuinely, which I hadn't expected. How are you feeling? She asked as we were getting ready to leave. Steady, I said, and I meant it. We walked in together. The venue was beautiful. I'll give Claire that. She has always had a good eye, and the space was elegant without being cold. Soft lighting, tall flower arrangements, the kind of quiet jazz that makes a room feel alive without demanding attention. It was already crowded when we arrived. I saw Claire before she saw me. She was standing near the bar with 2 women I didn't recognize laughing at something, holding a glass of champagne. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen, pale gold, fitted, the kind of dress that said, I have arrived. She looked beautiful. She always does. She has her father's cheekbones and my stubbornness, and looking at her from across a crowded room, I felt the whole complicated weight of loving someone who was also hurting you. Then she turned. The moment she saw me, everything on her face rearranged itself. The laugh stopped. The color changed. Her eyes went from me to Patricia and back to me, and I watched her try to decide what to do. I didn't do anything dramatic. I didn't walk toward her. I didn't make a face or a gesture. I simply met her eyes and gave her a small, calm nod. The way you acknowledge someone you love, even when things are difficult. She looked away. Patricia touched my arm lightly. You okay? Yes, I said. Let's get something to drink. We moved through the room. People introduced themselves. Marcus's colleagues, a few extended family members I recognized, some I didn't. Patricia knew many of them and introduced me easily, naturally, as Marcus's aunt and Claire's mother, said both things in the same breath as though they were equally unremarkable, which of course they were. I saw Marcus across the room about an hour in. He spotted me at the same moment. Something moved across his face. Surprise and then something harder to read. He excused himself from the conversation he was in and walked toward me, and for a moment, I wasn't sure what he was going to say. Margaret, he said. Congratulations, I said. This is a real achievement, Marcus. I mean that. He looked at me for a moment. Then something in his shoulders dropped, just slightly. Thank you, he said. I'm glad you're here. I don't know what that cost him. I don't know what conversation would happen later that night or in the days after. Those things weren't mine to know, but he said it and he meant it, and I filed it away. The evening moved on. Patricia and I found a small table near the windows, and we sat and watched the room, talking easily, and at some point, I realized I was genuinely enjoying myself. Not in spite of the situation, but partly because of it. because I had chosen to be there. Because I had decided that my presence in my own daughter's life was not something I was willing to quietly surrender just because it had been made inconvenient. Claire came to the table once, near the end of the night. She stood in front of me for a moment without saying anything. Patricia quietly excused herself. "Mom," Claire said finally. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. She looked down at her champagne glass. There were things moving behind her eyes, things she wasn't ready to say, or maybe didn't have words for yet. I recognized it. I'd seen that look on her face since she was a little girl, when she was working through something too big for her to hold comfortably. "We'll talk," she said. Not a promise exactly, not an apology, but a door she was leaving open, slightly. "Whenever you're ready," I said. "You know where I am." She nodded. She walked away. Patricia came back and refilled my water glass, and we sat in companionable silence for a minute. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "Like myself," I said. "It's been 2 months since the party. Claire and I have spoken 3 times. Carefully, the way you speak across a distance, you're both trying to figure out how to close. There are things that haven't been said yet, and things that may take a long time to say. I don't have a tidy resolution to offer you. Life doesn't usually work that way, and anyone who tells you it does isn't being straight with you. What I can tell you is this: I did not disappear. I was not made invisible. I walked into a room where I was not wanted, with my head up and my heart open, and I stood in my own life as myself. As Margaret, 63 years old, school librarian, mother, woman who grew up saying fixing to and still does. My daughter cannot erase where she came from, because where she came from is also who she is. The stubbornness that drives her ambition is mine. The sharp way she reads a room is something I watched develop. When she was 12 years old, the fact that she can hold it together in a crisis, she learned that from watching me. You don't get to cut away the roots and keep the tree. I think, somewhere under all of it, she knows that. I think that's partly why she came to the table, why she said, "We'll talk." Why she looked at me at the end of the night with something in her eyes that wasn't just discomfort. Patricia and I have had lunch twice since then. She's become something I didn't expect. A real friend, a person I'm genuinely glad to know. We're already talking about seeing a show in Richmond next month. Sometimes the people you find in the difficult moments are the unexpected gifts of those moments. You walk into a room where you weren't invited, and you find someone who sees you exactly as you are and thinks, yes, that's worth something. That's worth quite a lot, actually. I still have those little notes Claire left in my coat pockets when she was small. I still keep them in the box in my closet. I will keep them there until I can't anymore. She was a tender child. She still is underneath everything. I have to believe that, and I do. I'm her mother. I know who she is, even when she's forgotten, and I'm not going anywhere.